Hello everybody, and welcome back. So today we're gonna go ahead and work on the scroll to top buttons styles, and we're gonna go ahead and introduce the scroll top button style class. Now within this class, we're gonna go ahead and create a rule, right? A rule with its properties and declarations, and we're gonna explain its purpose. We're gonna go ahead and provide users with a quick way to return to the top of the page, and obviously that's through the scroll to top button. We're also gonna preview the SAS block that styles this button. Okay, so let's go ahead and start adding these properties. First, we got to create the class. So again, we've just finished working on creating the backbone or the skeleton of the scroll button, which is right here in the HTML, and we gave it its hashtag landing, and we referenced its ID, which is all the way at the top over here at the session the the landing section. Okay, and here it is, the ID. But let's go ahead and jump into creating the styles, as that's the focal point of this video. So we're gonna go ahead and press Control P, and then just type in landing. There it is. That's the first one that comes up. Press enter, and now we're gonna add the code block of the .scrollTop class. We're going to add this rule right under scroll down, since that's scroll down is obviously at the top, which is this one right here. This is the scroll down button, and scroll top should then be placed right under it. So right under scroll down and right on top of intro. So let's go ahead and start working on our rules and declarations. Okay, so the first thing we want to type is we're going to create the actual rule or the class. Okay, so it's scroll top. That's what we're going to call it, right? Scroll top. And then we're going to open and close in parentheses. Right, so it's scroll top, and we're going to put a position. Now this position is going to be fixed. It's going to be position fixed. Oh, here it is. Fixed. And then the bottom, now the bottom is going to be to rem. So the position fixed basically means that wherever we're going to place this button, when we decide to scroll up, left, right, whatever, it's going to stay fixed at that position. So now the button, or I'm sorry, the bottom is going to be 2 rems. 2 rem, okay? And the right side's also going to be 2 rems. Now, the whole purpose of that is, if you take a look, oh, misspelled it. If you take a look at the actual website, let's go ahead and open a browser in VS Code by pressing Control-Shift-P and then type in browser. So we're going to open the browser over here, and we're going to go to our site, kpdev design at excuse me, kpdevdesign.com, and it should open, and it did. So now let's go ahead and get this out the way. So we're going to place our new button all the way at the bottom. Okay, so it's going to be placed here. And how do I know that? Because of bottom 2 rem and right 2 rem. And 2 rem, in case you didn't know what it means, 2 rem is basically telling the browser, hey, I want you to place this button at the bottom right here, all the way at the bottom. You're going to go all the way at the bottom, and you're going to go up 32 pixels. Now you might be asking yourself, why is 32 pixels if it says 2 rem? Well, if you haven't taken my CSS class, then you probably don't know how that works, but the rem is actually the root element. So the root element has default size, and let's say the size could be 16 pixels, but since I didn't put a root element, the size is going to be based on the default size of the browser, and it's usually 16 pixels. So we're going to move it 16, and it's you have to multiply the 16 pixels by the rem. And in this case, the rem is 2, so 2 times 16. So 2 times 16 is 32. So when we move back down over here, you're going to notice that if you count the pixels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, eventually from here, you count pixels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, eventually 32 is going to be around here, right? So now the next one is the right, 2 rem, right? So 2 times, again, 2 times 16 is 32. So we're already all the way up here. So now we're going to start from the right, and we're going to count all the way to 32. So it's going to be around here, okay? So the next line of code that we're going to add is the C index, and then we're going to set the container display flex. So C index we're gonna set it to like 999 just to be sure that it's gonna be in the front. So basically it's kind of like overlaying on top of every other element. And after that, or just to bring it to the front, after that, we're gonna make sure that the container is display flex box. So display flex. Now what this does is display flex is that it by default, first of all, it makes it horizontal, the button. And then it makes this container, which is scrollTop, which is the parent container, it makes it flex compatible, or it could use its configurations, its properties, and apply different rules and declarations. So the next one we're going to do here is definitely align item. No, first we're going to change it from horizontal, since it's this display flex is by default it's horizontal. We're not going to change it to vertical. So by changing it to vertical, we need to first flex direction, right? We're going to go ahead and use the property flex direction. By the way, the instructor explained all this very well, so I really appreciate his expertise and professional work. So flex direction is now going to be column, so now it's going to be vertical. And now we're going to align the items center. So basically the button is going to be set on a vertical draft or line, and its items are going to be center. So the next one we're going to do is that we're going to add a gap and an opacity. So we want there to be a gap of 4 pixels. Okay, so it's basically just giving it a gap of 4 pixels. Self-explanatory. The opacity is going to be 0 because we don't want it to have any visibility at the moment. Make it at 0. Okay, so the next properties that we're going to go ahead and make changes to is going to be the pointer events and the transition. So the pointer events, and then it's going to be none. We don't want it to be visible, and we don't want the user to be able to hover wherever the icon is going to be placed, and then the cursor or the pointer comes up. We don't want there to be no effect whatsoever. So the next one we're going to add is going to be the transition, of course. Transition, and the transition, we want it to have opacity of 3 seconds and then easing in and out. So it's going to be opacity 3 seconds, easing in and out. So basically when it's visible, it's going to ease in 3 seconds, and when it's invisible, it eases out 3 seconds. And the text decoration, we want the text decoration to be none, of course. Well, that basically keeps the links from getting from being underlined. We don't want any underline. So we're going to do this. Text decoration is going to be none. Perfect. Okay, so now within this container, the .scrollTop class, I keep calling it a container. I'm sorry. I don't. It has nothing to do with a container, but it is containing the properties. So maybe that's why I'm confusing it. Even though if you go to your HTML and then you look for Control F scroll, right? You might want to say that this is the main container because it is. The class does exist inside the main container or the wrapper tag. But you don't want to mix up these terminologies. Without the proper terminology, you're not going to be able to get the answers you're looking for. So that's something, that you want to go ahead and think twice about before you move forward. So again, I might just call it a container just because it's containing the properties, but this is actually a rule with declarations, okay? So within this rule, or class, the proper name should be class actually. Excuse me. The proper name should be class. So within this class, the .scrollTop class, we're going to add another class that's going to be called .visible. So we're going to connect these two with an end. So it's going to be end, right? So we're going to connect the .scrollTop class, and we're going to put it within here with this end .visible. Okay, so and the opacity is going to be 1, and it's going to be set to all on the pointer event. Now this is when it is visible. It's going to have an opacity of 1, and then it's going to use whatever pointer whatever pointer the user is using, whether it be a pointer, arrow, or a pen, or whatever icon the pointer has. So the next class that we're going to work on is the scrolling arrow, the scrollTop arrow class. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna refrain from typing all this because it could take longer than expected. So I'm gonna go ahead and paste it here. Okay. So what this class does is that it basically it turns the container into display flex. So it gives it the power to use its properties and configurations. And in this case, we're going to turn it into a vertical direction, and we're going to make sure that the align items is centered. So now this is for the arrows. This is for the arrows. So right now we need to add the other arrows. So in order to do that, we're going to go ahead and create the other class. Okay. So let me make sure. Okay, this should be correct. So right under here, we're going to go ahead and add it within here. Actually, we might have to get rid of one of these. Let me get rid of this one and let me just add it here. All right. So wait, okay, here it is. Okay, so I added the rest of the code just because I know that it's going to take a little longer than usual. These red marks, I can take it off by just highlighting this and then pressing shift tab so it can move to the left, or shift tab. There you go. So now within the scrollTop arrows lives the scrollTop arrow. So the scrollTop arrow is actually one arrow, and this is all the arrows within. So these arrows are all going to be aligned item center, and it's going to be presented in a vertical manner. So the scrollTop arrow is going to have a width of 15 pixels. Now what we're doing here is that we're creating a chevron. So chevron, in order to do that without having to use any like special icons or anything, images or whatever is the case, we're going to actually create it from scratch with CSS. So we're going to use in order to do that, you got to create a box, and the way you create a box is by giving it a width of whatever amount of pixels you want to give it. In this case, it's going to be 15 pixels for the width and 15 pixels for the height. So what that does is that it creates an L, right? So now in order to create that L, you got to give it a, you got to give it some width, some girth, border. So the border right is going to be 2 pixels, and the border bottom is going to be 2 pixels, and voila, there goes your L. However, the L is pointing towards, I believe, southwest and west south. Obviously, it's an L, but we want to turn this L rotated to the specific point where it's pointing up like an arrow. In order for you to do that, you use the transform rotate negative 135 degrees, right? And the animation is going to have an animation of scroll up animation 1 second infinite. So this is going to give it an effect of it's going to give it a movement effect, as if the arrows are like flying up of some, or like going up of some sort. Okay, so basically this is what that does. That's what the animation does. It creates a chevron arrow pointing up using the CSS borders and rotation, and animates the arrows to pulse upward, reinforcing the scroll direction. So yeah, I mean, it's not as complicated as we put it sometime, or as complicated as we put it sometime. But again, just to get walk through this one more time, because this is very important. The scroll top arrows stacks 3 chevron vertically, so it makes it look like 3 arrows, right? And again, this right here, it stacks them up vertically, so you might think that this is creating the arrows, right? But it's part of it. So all this does is if we put it flex, is going to be horizontal. The arrows are probably going to point, I believe, to the right or to the left, or maybe it won't work, but we could probably try that out in the near future. But I know for sure that this is going to point up, because it's stacked up upon each other, each arrow, right? So the scroll top arrow has a 16 by 15 pixels. It uses border right and border bottom to create a chevron, which then will be rotated 135 degrees, pointing up. So obviously this has a lot to do with making them go point up, because they're stack upon each other. Okay, so the animation scroll up animation 1 second infinite alternate, it pulses the arrows upward, like I said, it gives it that effect that it's moving up. And the inf child animation delay, what it does is that it staggers the animation for a cascading effect. So this gives it the effect, like a staggering effect. So like it slows it down a bit, almost like slow motion, but it looks like almost like if it was one of those illuminated signs in Las Vegas or whatnot, or your favorite nightclub. Anyways, the keyframe scroll up animation, it makes the arrows fade, so it fades arrows in and out for a pulse effect. Okay, so again, just to reiterate this little part right here, so the nth child 1, what this means is that it's going to take it's going to take the nth child 1, which is this one right here. This is a child element, so it's going to take its child element, and it's going to give it a delay of 3 seconds, and then the second one's going to give it a delay of 2 seconds, the third one's going to be 1 second, and then the keyframe scroll up animation, what it's going to do is that it's going to fade arrows in and out, like I said, for opposing effect. Yeah, but this one is a little different. I think this is the one that, yeah, so at 0%, when it's not visible at all, it's going to be at 0 opacity. At 75%, it's going to be at 75 at 0 and 0. It's going to have an opacity of 0 at 0 seconds, and then it's going to have an opacity of 75 at 75%, or 75%, yeah, and then at 100%, it's going to be completely visible. Or I think this is 3/4. Yeah, it's going to have an opacity at the time of 3/4 of the time. 3/4 of the time, yeah. It's a little tongue twister, a little complicated, but it's really easier than what you think. Once you actually go through this on your own, and you know you're gonna fly through this like faster than what you think. So the end wheel, which we're gonna add right now. The end wheel, let's go ahead and add the end wheel, and we're gonna add the inner too, but yeah, let's add the rest. This might take longer than usual, but I'm just gonna go ahead and copy it like that. We can go through it line by line, and I'm gonna put it right outside of the scroll top arrow, and we're gonna go ahead and paste it here. We're gonna do the same thing we did up there, so we can take this off, these warnings. Shift tab, there you go. So the wheel, so the wheel is basically it's going to be 42 by 24 pixels. It's going to have rounded edges, rectangle with a border position relative. So this is what that basically does. It's going to give it the height of 42 pixels, 24 pixels. The border radius is going to be 10 pixels. So then it gives it like that rectangular edge or look, right? And then we want the border to be 2 pixels, and it's going to be solid. It's going to be white. It's going to be position relative. And the inner, what we just did right now is create a rectangle. So if you look at the site and we go all the way up here, you're going to notice this is the wheel right here. Okay, and this was done through that line of code, or those properties and that class right here. This is what makes that wheel. And then the inner is basically the dot. So it's going to be position absolute. The bottom is going to start up. It's going to be from the bottom 5 pixels up, and from the left is going to be 50%, which is going to be half of the whole circle. It's going to be transform translate -50. So what this does is that it places it smack down in the middle, perfectly centered. And the width is going to be 4 pixels. The height is going to be 4 pixels. Okay. So that's basically, I believe, is that's the size of the dot itself, right? So again, the inner is basically it creates the small dot inside the wheel, and it animates it to go up and down. And the animation takes place here. It's going to have a border radius of 50%, so it's going to be round. And the animation will scroll up. It's going to have a 5-second linear infinite. So every 5 seconds is going to have a specific movement, and the keyframe is going to be at 0%. It's going to have 5. It's going to be 5 pixels. At 50% from the bottom is going to be 10 pixels. At 100% from the bottom is going to be 5 pixels. This is what gives it that special effect movement. Okay. So just to recap everything, the .scrollTop block uses only CSS for all visual and animation, no images or icons. I think that's very cool. There's no images, no icons involved, no help, no SVGs, none of that. It was purely CSS. So all show and high logic is handled by toggling the .visible class with JavaScript. And the button is always present in the DOM for accessibility, only visually hidden until JavaScript kicks in the toggling effect. And the arrows and wheel animation reinforces the button's purpose and improves user experience. Yeah, it does reinforce the button's purpose and improves user experience. It definitely does, because of the animation, so it makes it look vividly alive. So it's basically a great example of accessible animated user interface using only CSS and a small amount of JavaScript. That's pretty much it. So thank you for joining us, and I'm gonna go ahead and see you guys in the next video.